A very good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. You're all welcome to the IIM February 2024 webinar. And today, as usual, we've got a renowned professional in the field of information management to do justice to this interesting topic. It is the second webinar this year. Last year, we had a similar session where we all learned a lot in terms of best practices, where we had the opportunities to share lessons learned and so on and so forth. So without taking too much of our time, I want to introduce today's resource persons. She's Bossy Bernadette C. May. She is a director, IIM Canada chapter. She's a good friend and colleague of mine, and going by years of experience in the field, I strongly believe that today, for those of us that have been able to make our time to be part of this session, will not regret, creating time to attend the session. So on that note, I want to invite Bossy. You have the floor and the opportunity to also do more in terms of introduction about yourself. Thank you and have a wonderful session.
Thank you very much. Yes. So before we get into all of the grandiose of knowledge management and the wonderful things, I'd like to go through a few things just to make sure that the meeting is satisfactory for everyone. We will be keeping to time, so we'll be having a presentation for about 45 minutes. If you do have questions throughout, I do have everybody's screen on my other monitor. Do raise your hand if there is something important that needs to be spoken about right away, but do also make sure that you keep note of your questions and we can talk about them at the end. Please do make sure that you put yourself on mute if you're not already on mute. That'll make sure that it is easy for everybody to understand and hear. And then, of course, there will be, everybody is noted who's participating in these courses, but of course, this is being recorded as well for the future. So a little bit about myself. I work at Deloitte in Canada, and I'm there a senior manager in their content services division. I'm also, as was mentioned, one of the directors of the Canadian chapter of the IIM. One of the things that I do not only at Deloitte and whenever we're looking at presentations, but anytime that I'm helping anybody, even if it's just from a discussionary perspective, is I'm looking to be and I'm leading the engineering and design information management, which is all of your engineering information, a lot of your asset information, the more complex stuff. I do that particularly under the umbrella of Deloitte Canada. But I am also a trainer and an instructor for information management in general. While I focus on engineering and asset heavy industries, I do also work a lot with knowledge management, with enterprise content management, and all the types of information management, bar records management, because that is a full and deep chapter of its own. So what we're going to go through next, we've already done a bit of an introduction, is we're going to start talking about the basics. What is knowledge management? It's a term that is becoming very popular. It's been thrown around a lot, but we really need to understand what actually is knowledge management if we're going to be able to help people and companies to get better at maintaining it. It's very important as well to understand what the 3 types of knowledge management is, but because each one of them have got a slightly different mechanism for capturing and sharing and consuming the information. So it's really important that we understand them. And then, of course, we're going to look at the value of knowledge management to an organization within any industry is really important. And I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like. We're also going to go through some enablement pillars to talk about what are the different things that we need to do. And you'll see some similarity in what we would do with any information. However, it is important to note that we have to apply these things to knowledge management, the 3 types of knowledge management, quite differently. So once we've done that and we've explained it, we're also going to go through how can we classify content. So a few activities that we can do surrounding working on classifying content within knowledge management. And then, of course, we're going to look at other enablers. So, you know, that's our what they call PPT, the process, people, and technology. So we're going to go through a little bit of that as well. All right. So what is knowledge management? Well, it's information, but it's more than that. It's a cycle of gathering information, using information, improving on information, and then capturing it again, and so on and so forth. In 1995, Nanaka and Takuchi basically came up with this proposition of what knowledge management is. And there's 2 extremes of knowledge. There's the tacit, which is an internalized form of information. It's inside each one of our individual brains. It's not necessarily captured anywhere. And then we have the explicit, which is it's been explained, it's been captured, it is in a document, a schematic, or a presentation of some sort. So the way that we go through all of these different things is, typically speaking, with all knowledge, and if any of you have ever been involved in creating a work instruction or creating any course material or creating a procedure or a process from scratch, what we have is all of that internalized knowledge of the process or of the area of expertise or whatever that has, it's all inside you. So it's tacit because it's now internalized and it's in each individual person. The socialization element, that's where we're starting to take the internalized knowledge and we're going to start converting it into something that another person can consume. So we are sharing it through different means, different media, different platforms. It can be something that's not as formalized as a document, such as a conversation, whatever that means. And when we go through and look at the 3 types of knowledge management, you'll start to see there that the socialization and the externalization, which we're going to talk about, have to be done in different ways for those 3 types of knowledge. So then we do get to the externalization. That's where we've taken it from inside our brains and we have put it into a mechanism that can be consumed by somebody else. Typically, with much of our knowledge, it goes into documents, workflows, schemas, whatever the case is. It is put into a form where most often we can review it, revise it, or contribute to it to make it better, and all of that wonderful stuff. But then we go to the combination. The combination is where things start to get a little bit tricky, and it's really the basis of knowledge management, because we've got document management, we have data, we have information, we have records, but knowledge is something entirely different. So with the combination, it leads back to the internalization, and let me tell you why. If I have written down a procedure for you to use, and I've now socialized it, I'm starting to write it down, I'm maybe doing some training, I'm doing all those wonderful things, and it becomes externalized information or externalized knowledge. You have a document, you have training, you have instructions. You are now going to go and perform a task that the procedure outlines. While you are performing that task, you as an individual, and this is going to be based on your knowledge, the way that you approach things, the way that you think, you're going to start almost automatically doing things not as prescribed as it is in the procedure. You're going to start doing it more your own way. You're going to maybe, if it's, something manual, you're going to hold the screw slightly differently depending on how you would typically do it, or you're going to start maybe taking not a shortcut, but making something a little bit, instead of 2 steps, 1 step, and you're going to make it your own. All of that is tacit information that becomes internalized to you, because now you know how to maybe improve this process, or you've been doing it more efficiently or more effectively, but it's not in that externalized procedure, it's in your head again. So now what we need to do is, and this is why it's a cycle, we need to extract that through different mechanisms through the socialization into that externalized format. And then the next person or yourself can go back and consume that again. And it's going to go through that combination, and it's going to continually grow. And that is a part of continual improvement of any process or any piece of knowledge. It's growing it, it's sharing it, it's making it better, and then capturing it and sharing it again. It's really important that we understand how this occurs from a knowledge perspective, because when we write our continual improvement procedures, which is one of the procedures that is an enabler, we need to make sure that when we're writing that process for continual improvement, that we understand the knowledge management element that has to go into that procedure and process. Okay. So let's talk about the 3 types of knowledge management. Let's imagine that I've asked you to balance and hold your balance for as long as you can, right? Lift up one leg, balance as long as you can. There's certain ways that we can explain the 3 types of knowledge management when it comes to it. So the first kind is explicit. It's explained, it is clear, it's written down normally, it's captured in a way that can be shared or read or learned or trained upon. So you may read, something relating to balance, and it could be, gravitational forces, even distribution of weight. You can read that your arms need to be up to help with the counterbalance. You can read those things in order to learn or prepare how to perform the activity of balancing on one leg. Okay. Now, the next one is implicit, and it's a little bit tricky because there's certain things that I would expect another human being to apply to an activity. So for example, this is implied that you will stand on your foot that's flat foot. You're not going to try and stand on your tippy toes. You're not going to try and stand in high heel shoes. I mean, you can if you want, but I really wouldn't encourage that because you'll probably fall, much like I would. But it is implied that you are going to find a flat surface, that you're not going to have rocks under your feet, that you're going to stand flat-footed. It's implied that you're going to do this. You should already know this based off normal logic, normal day-to-day experience that does not require any specialty training. With implied knowledge, you don't necessarily want to capture that into explicit information, because if you prescribe absolutely everything, you take away the ability for people to just be people in their own work or home environment. Right? So you don't want to be too prescriptive where it's stifling, because we are all slightly different. And maybe some people balance better in high heels. And as long as the objective of balancing on one leg is achieved, who are we to judge? So we don't want to be too prescriptive. But at the same time, you have to be aware that implicit knowledge may not necessarily be there for everybody. So if you notice that something that is typically implied is not being done in the course of performing an activity, then it needs to then maybe go to that explicit information. The last one that I want to share with you is the tacit. It's tactile. You can almost, it's how it feels. So when you're balancing on one leg, I can tell you that the different muscles in your foot work with the bones and the arms and gravity and all of that. But once you start to stand on one leg, you're not going to feel it until you stand on that one leg. You're going to feel how your foot moves and how it feels to move from one side of your foot to the other. You're going to feel what it feels like to start falling over. And if you look at a ballet dancer when they're spinning around doing their pirouettes, it takes years for them to perfect it because they've got the explicit, they've got the implicit, but it's that tacit information that takes years of practice to build up. And that's what gives them that ability. Now, there's definitely benefits to capturing tacit information. For example, if you sat down with a ballet dancer and you said, can you please share with me some of the tacit knowledge that you have surrounding spinning around 5 times? They may say something like, when you feel your weight pulling slightly forward, if you pull your one shoulder back slightly, then you can counteract it. And so you can somewhat capture some of that tacit information, but a lot of it would have to be done almost visually or in some other non-traditional way of sharing information other than documents or training, right? There has to be some creative ways that we can capture that information. I'll share one little story with you that I did with one of my clients. It was a computer assembly shop where they assembled for mass production. It was mass production. It wasn't like on an individual basis. For mass production, they assembled custom, built their fancy computers. And there were processes and workflows and instructions and pictures and diagrams on how to perform the work when they were putting, the whole innards together, the motherboard and all the different components that get plugged in. But there was one fellow who was just better. He was just better. He was faster. His quality was immaculate. He was just so amazing. But he was getting older, and they were very worried that nobody would ever be as good as him. We couldn't figure out why he was so good. So what we did was we video recorded him from the top because he was a bit shy. So from the top, we just recorded his station and watched him do this. And it was something silly, like he was holding a component a certain way instead of the way everybody else just like from an implied perspective would have thought to hold it. So he was just holding it slightly differently, and it created the world of difference. We would never have been able to know that or capture that if we'd not gone out of the box to capture the knowledge that this man has. So it's very interesting to see how we can capture these different things. So I hope that that gives you an idea. And right now, would we please be able to bring up poll number 1, which is going to ask, what do you think out of these 3 types is going to be the most difficult type to capture and share? So if we could put that poll up. And do let me know. Thank you. Okay, quickly answer, click on it.
Hope you can see the poll now.
Yes, we can. Okay, we've got just under half of you that have answered. Please do go ahead and let us know which one do you think. It looks like we have a clear leader so far, and I'm not sure if the remaining 38% will really make completely different, but I'm going to say that we are going to have the clear winner of that tacit information. And I would say, in my experience, it is an accurate thing. It's the most difficult one to capture. It is most difficult to identify which implicit information needs to be captured. But once you've identified what implicit or implied information needs to be captured, it becomes a little bit easier. But tacit is definitely the hardest one to continually capture because it's something that we need for the most part, whereas implicit, we don't always need to identify it. So thank you very much for participating in that poll. Okay. So moving on to the next slide, we are now going to be talking about the value of knowledge management. So when you're trying to determine the value of knowledge management within a particular type of company or a particular type of scenario, you want to try and understand first, what is the business objective? Some companies have got most of their workforce retiring because they need to start looking at succession planning. We may have a brand new company where they hired tons of really smart, professionals who are subject matter experts, and they need to try and capture everything that's in those heads. They might not have any procedures yet to even talk of. It might be a startup. Once you understand what information you need to keep, you have to try and figure out what knowledge is required in order to achieve those business outcomes or to achieve those procedures or to achieve that working knowledge. Then one of the most important things is, where are the gaps? If we've got the business objectives to know and be able to do all of these things, and we have these experts, and we can assign these experts to some of these, which ones of our business objectives do we not have somebody who knows enough about? So you can really start to look at the workforce on, or maybe you need a consultant or a contractor, or you need to hire somebody because it's business critical, it's long term, all of those different things. You can't tackle everything at once. So if you try, and this is with any implementation of any process, whether it be information management related or not, it could be HR systems or IT systems, the same thing stands true. You cannot implement everything at once. You cannot go from 0 to 100. It is a sliding scale. You need to identify if I get 20% of my knowledge captured and 20% of my documents written, which are the most critical ones that have to fit in that 20%, that first 20%? From there, when you get to 40%, what are the next layer of most critical documents or knowledge or information that I need, and so on and so forth. And you stagger that out. Now, within the 20%, you do what is called sprints, if this is something that is a term that you're aware of. But it's basically like you take that first 20% and you say that 20% is going to occur over the first 6 months. Once you know which procedures or pieces of information or knowledge needs to be captured within that 20%, you break it down into details. And each one of those little details is done in a sprint, like a 1 week or a 2 week sprint to get through that 6 months. Because if you try to tackle everything as well within that first priority list, it's going to become overwhelming and people are going to get fatigued. They're going to have change fatigue. They're going to have knowledge capture fatigue. You're going to lose your quality and all that kind of stuff. So bridging the gap from now till then requires a little bit of effort, and you need to make sure that you implement proper actions in strategic planning so that you can measure those outcomes. The value of knowledge management is then going to give you efficiency with people working the same way to the best, most efficient processes. Collaboration between people as they start sharing and disseminating information and making things better. Standardization is always a big value, particularly with any sort of repetitive tasks that need to be done. Your workforce retention is going to be improved because people are going to feel like that they're supported and you telling them what they need to know so that they can perform their best. You're also going to reduce your risk because things are not going to be done differently by different people and then somebody does something wrong. The other thing it does is innovation. Once people are not stuck trying to think of how to do something and they're just doing it, they can think of ways to make it better, right? So that is the true value of the knowledge management and making sure that we understand it and capture it the way that it needs to be captured. Because remember, this is not about what we want. It's about what the information or the knowledge needs. So let's look at some of the enablement pillars. And I love puzzle pieces in slides because I think they look very pretty. But here we've got the people, the processes, the technology, and then our key performance indicators, which goes back to the value, which goes back to those business objectives. But while we are going through the capability of knowledge management, we need to build up the processes, the people, and the technology at the same time, all the way through the cycle. So we're going to collaborate and create together. And that, again, particularly from a technology and a people perspective, we're working remotely a lot. We're working globally a lot. Very often technology is what saves us when we're trying to collaborate. So we have to have not just the ability to capture, store, and share the knowledge or the content through technology, but we have to find the right ways to collaborate through technology. Once we start capturing, there are such amazing tools out there these days. There are things like, all the Microsoft products to start off with, and we're getting into the AI and the generative AI realm now, and there's high definition cameras if you have to zoom in on something at a micro level. There's all sorts of, really highly available and mostly affordable technologies out there. But then we also need to, from a people and a process perspective, not just write down anything that comes to our mind, but really think, how is the person who's going to be reading this going to be affected by how I'm writing it? So you want to make sure that you write it properly. Sharing and finding, that's very much a process and a technology. And then on the people side, it's the training on those tools. Storage and retention is also very important. Now you have to have those processes that heavily dictate what your technology does. The people part is really important because you can have beautiful procedures in a wonderful technology platform, but if people don't use it, it's not worth much. Unfortunately, the way people are is it's not just about training them on how to find it. It's also training them on why they should care, what it means to them, what does it do for them from a change and a psychological perspective. That really, really is the biggest key through the training and the adoption side of things for the people, is they have to understand why it is going to be good for them. It sounds a little bit selfish, but we are still humans and we need to make sure that we're getting something out of it. Once we've adopted the way of doing things, we are automatically going to look for ways to make it better. And that's a continual improvement. And again, from a process perspective, capturing tacit, identifying implicit, and then creating explicit is all going to be a part of your continual improvement. And you're going to have to get a bit creative because tacit information. Excellent. So we're going to move on and we're going to look at the explanation of the different pillars. So we've got create, capture, share and find, retention, and train. Let's do one at a time. When you are creating, it's more than just a discussion. It's more than just collaborating. You actually have to find ways that you can action the knowledge that you've captured and that you're talking about. And it needs to be done in a very clear and concise manner. We don't want to ramble on and have a 100-page procedure when 15 pages will do, because people are not going to read it. And then it's going to go into that training. They're not going to want to adopt it because it's going to be overwhelming. It's not going to be valuable to them, and we're going to lose the people. So we want to make sure that we also find different methods to capture the different types of tacit, implicit, and explicit information. So we've got message boards, whether they be physical or online. We've got forums, we've got podcasts or discussions. We've got lunch and learns, if you guys use those there, where everybody brings their lunch into the boardroom and then, you talk about something for an hour while they eat. Videos are also really good. Frequently asked questions. We have that a lot on a lot of the internet sites. Those are all great ways of capturing different kinds of information. Then we've got with the capturing, we need to make sure that we're capturing high priority information, right? So we need to also make sure, and don't forget, we've got that prioritization, which goes to the business goals, but then it also goes through the capture process so that we're capturing the right information and we are prioritizing the information that we need to share with people. One thing that I would like you to think of in the capture realm is that when you are creating explicit or capturing tacit information, we don't necessarily need to capture everything the first go around, right? That's part of continual improvement. It is much better to have a well-written 40% of what you want people to do. That is the most critical element of what they need to do to improve efficiency, effectiveness, whatever the goal is of creating the information. We want to make sure that it is the critical stuff, the low-hanging fruit, if you've heard that term, or another term often used is to stop the bleeding. You know, it's putting the Band-Aid on, and sometimes that is good enough at first. You should always have long-term objectives and phased approach to maybe going to that 40% later on, or, you know, getting to all the things that we would love to be able to do, but you don't have to get there yet. So when you are capturing information, make sure that you are critically and strategically thinking about what information needs to be captured now and what can be noted for later capture. Sharing and finding, I'm sure we are all very aware of the sharing and finding. It's our technology, it's our security and access, it's our, you know, metadata, it's the folder structures, it's the digital data, it's all of the different things. And you need to remember that with anything that we capture within knowledge management, regardless of the output, is that it's not all or nothing. Not everybody needs to have everything. So sometimes we limit access because it doesn't pertain to them and we don't want to overload them. So there is that thing about information overload that we have to be careful of. But I'm sure that you've got lots of experience and what have you with sharing and finding and setting up systems for information management. Retention as well. Retention is particularly important when it comes to knowledge because what we need to make sure is that it doesn't become stale. There are so many things with knowledge management where we need to retain documents and certain legalities surrounding retention periods and all of that wonderful thing. But we also need to think of knowledge that is relating to the culture of a company or the culture of the people performing the actions. If that culture changes, that knowledge needs to adapt. So we have to be very careful as well that it's not just about the retention policies, but we actually look at how that knowledge needs to be retained. Now, the other thing about retention is that it can't all be in somebody's head because once they leave the company, we no longer have it. So we have to retain information by extracting it from that individual as well through that cycle of socialization and then externalization. The training is really important. Well laid out training material is very important. But again, with knowledge management, we have to be creative because we need to look at things that are just day-to-day activities where we might have something like the fellow who was holding the component slightly differently. You know, so a training video is really good there, but nothing overly long or difficult to understand. So we have to be cognizant as well on how we capture or how we train on the different kinds of knowledge. Ultimately, we do have to also track the knowledge and who's received the training on the different kinds of knowledge, because that way we can trace it back to our key performance indicators to say, look, this element of our business is so much better because 80% of our staff have been trained on this particular element. So what I'm going to ask for now is the second poll, please. And the second poll is going to ask, what do you think the best way to capture tacit information is? Is it going to be something along the lines of video cameras to record activities, in-person sessions, podcasts, or written forums? Now, I know that I gave you the example of the camera, but do think about yourself in your environment. I really want you to think, how is it going to be best for me to capture the tacit information in my world that other people will be able to easily be trained on? If you need help thinking of which one you would select, try to think of a task that you know how to do well, that somebody else, when you try to explain it, they don't quite get it. What would help you to train them? Is it visual? Is it audio? What sort of method can you use out of these 4 examples to properly capture it? Yeah, it looks like in-person and video cameras, which is video cameras is almost like in person because it captures all the things. It's sound, it's visual, it's how somebody moves, it's their body language, it's all of the different things. So videos are as close to in person as technology can enable us. But I can see there it's neck and neck with actual in-person sessions. Right. So basically what I'm gathering from this is we need to show people the nuances and the variances in how we might do something. Very nice. Now, the one thing that we do need to consider, for example, if we are going to be using videos, there is an information management subcategory called digital asset management. And digital asset management is often used for universities where they will say, we've got photos, we've got videos, we've got lessons, we've got audio files. Excuse me, we have books, we have, pamphlets, we have all of these different things. We've got posters, we've got brochures. They've got a whole bunch of different non-traditional pieces of information or knowledge. And digital asset management is very much, it's a little bit deeper than just information management, because information management very often deals just with data and documents. But when we're talking about video files, we're talking about embedding tags at certain parts within a video. So it's a little bit more complex. If you have a 2-hour long video, we should be thinking of things like breaking it down into segments so that when somebody, this is from the adoption and training thing again, when somebody's trying to find how to do this one piece or they can't remember, which way the fellow was holding the component, they need to be able to find it. And in order to find it, we need to do a little bit of extra work with some of this more creative technology and ways of capturing things, is to then put bookmarks in the video, tag them properly, link those tags to other pieces of metadata that will then show up on a search result, whatever that may look like, because we need to be able to, almost like when you're tracking through a song and you want to find your favorite part, you need to be able to easily and quickly go there, and it's going to help. If people struggle to find the information that they need to use in order to do a better job or learn that something that they've forgotten, they're not going to do it if it's difficult. So we have to work on our digital asset management, which is our digital media, and make sure that we and do the right thing for the users. Perfect. Thank you very much for running that second poll. That's very interesting. Just trying to think, there was nothing else that I wanted to share on the digital asset management in the videos, but it does go a lot into the adoption piece. So let's talk a little bit now about what steps can we take to classify content? Because before we can identify what kind of knowledge it is, whether it's explicit, implicit, or tacit, we have to first classify what it is. Typically, we will look at how does it need to be accessed? Who needs to access it? Is this something that is going to be used by absolutely everybody across the company? Is this something that is going to be used by, a certain type of business unit? So whether it's like operational, whether that be HR, IT, operational, finance, things to run the company, or is it going to be a little bit more in alignment with what the company does, whether that's, technical or engineering or computer products or whatever the actual purpose of the company is versus running the company. From there, we can also determine, is this going to be highly technical? Is this something that is going to be relied on day to day? Is this going to be something accessed by just a small group of people once a month? Maybe they've got something very specific two people need to do at the end of each month. All of those different things. Once we understand, if we've got a bucket of information and we understand who's going to be using it, then what we can start to look at is how many pieces of knowledge are going to be shared by multiple different groups. So if you've got these two people need to know how to do this one thing at the end of the month, a different two people need to know how to do something slightly different, but it's almost the same. How can we capture that knowledge so that we've got standardization between the two groups for similar activities, but then still share that knowledge on how that's going to be different between those two groups? Then we're going to also make sure that we understand how it's going to be consumed. What is the purpose of this knowledge? Is it to train them from scratch because they don't know? Is this something just to help them improve? Are we capturing this knowledge to make it so that they can perform just a little bit better, even though they're still doing fine? So the people who were assembling those computers, they were doing a fine job, but this other piece of knowledge, it just makes them that little bit better, which is overall good for the business from an efficiency perspective. It is really important to map it properly, because once we understand where this knowledge and where this information is going to be mapped out, then we can be very understanding of the different groups and how they need to consume that information, and also and then we can apply the three types of knowledge. What are these three different types of knowledge? How can we capture it? We go through that whole process using all of those pillars, making sure that from a knowledge perspective, we're extracting the information out of everybody's heads, putting it into the proper way, as opposed to just trying to write everything down, and then making sure that we can share it to the right people. Okay, from there, we're going to very quickly talk about the enablers for the process, people, and technology. Once we've done this, we'll be able to start looking at some questions. So please do start writing down your questions if you want in the chat, and we can get to them. From a process perspective, some of the processes and policies that you need to consider with knowledge management is the management of change. We need to make sure that we can go from that externalization through the combination to internalization back to sharing. We have to be able to follow that full cycle. We also need to make sure that we are doing a proper cross-functional review of that knowledge, because even though some person wants to hold something this way, it may not be right for the component. Maybe he's squishing a pen and he shouldn't be doing that. And so while it's making him faster, it's not necessarily the right thing to be doing. So we also want to make sure that we have a good cross-functional review of any of the changes or updates that are going along. And of course, we need to track all of those changes in case something happens where we have to revert back, just in case. The other thing is this last one, instructions for consistent approaches to content creation. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we tell people we have an actual explicit procedure or instruction on how to capture information and the different approaches that we can use. So almost like a document to train people to think from a knowledge management perspective as opposed to just an explicit information management perspective. So having the documents to explain how to make documents is actually important. The people, the change management. I mean, as important as continual improvement is from a process perspective, change management is hugely important from the people perspective. People need to feel validated, and they need to make sure that there's training and adoption, succession planning we've spoken about already, where we have to capture everything that's all in all of these smart people's heads and get it into some form of knowledge share. But then we can also train people when we bring them on board. We can work with the culture as we spoke about. And of course, leadership needs to be there to support everybody through the whole process. From a technology perspective, this is going to include any single time we can automate something, we should try and do it. One thing that I will caution you of is don't look for automation if you don't know what your process is. It's very important to always start with what you want to do and what your objective and outcome is, and then find the technology to support it. Your content management rules are going to apply to knowledge management as well. Your security and access, your properties, the functionality, the sharing. People want to be able to use the technology, but if it's complicated or convoluted, or it doesn't get them to where they want to be quickly, we do live in a world of instant gratification these days, and we need to have our technology provide that. The user interface is one thing. The user experience is a whole completely different thing. They need to want to go and find this information. So I hope that was informative. Thank you very, very much. Now, if there are any questions, please do write them in chat, or if you prefer, you can come off mute to ask your question, and I will do what I can to answer them.
Thank you very much, Bose, for that elaborate presentation. It is quite enlightening, and I believe the participants today have learned a lot from it. Knowledge management is one discipline that is still evolving, and the need to ensure that we continue to educate and also enlighten people on what knowledge management is all about, and how organizations, individuals, and even the society as a whole can benefit from knowledge management cannot be overemphasized. So well done for a wonderful presentation. I believe we'll have some questions in the chat box. And just like she mentioned, if we have any question concerning this presentation, please do not hesitate to put it in the chat box. And even after today's presentation, if if you have any need for any form of clarification, you can feel free to reach the IIM training department. They can always, get your questions across to Bose, and we ensure that you get prompt response on your questions. So the floor is still very much open.
Yeah, I think we had one person raise her hand, and we do have another question in chat. So was it Yemi? You had your hand up. Did you have a question? Not sure if she's still with us. There is a question in the chat, though, about an application for knowledge management. And are you talking specifically about a technology application? I think that in the regard of technology applications specific to knowledge management, It is a little bit difficult because it's normally a grouping of technologies. We will have something like SharePoint or OpenText or whatever you're using for managing the explicit information, your documents, policies, procedures, work instructions, whatever the case may be. If we're talking about very technical explicit information, it might be something a little bit more on the engineering document management side of things, or the operational, for that kind of realm, or within an HR application, or within an IT or a risk and safety application. For the tacit information, the videos, forums, we're going to have to get a little bit creative. We're going to have to use applications that are out there available that is specific to that kind of capture. So we may, if you look at the Microsoft product or suite of products, they have many of the things that we may need, although not everything. And I'm definitely not going to say that they're the answer to everything. But similar types of application packages may have different things like that. We've got somebody who wants to ask a question live, and then I'll get to the next one in chat.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Yes, good evening, Matt. Thank you for sharing this important information. So my question is, there's some information or knowledge that is confidential. How can one have access to learn from such knowledge, which is confidential knowledge or information?
Yeah, that's a really, really important question. So whenever there is knowledge that is confidential, and this is why the process of mapping your content, so understanding who's going to be using it, which groups are going to be needing to access it, all of that is a critical step when you're classifying your information. If you have information, I mean, you can still use the same mechanisms, whether it be a video or a forum or what have you, but you may need to, for even legal reasons or for risk mitigation reasons, keep that information private and only share it through your access permissions or confidential folder structure or whatever it is that you're going to use with the users who are allowed to have access to it. So mapping out the information or the knowledge to the users and understanding the access and security permissions is definitely a critical step that you have to make sure that you do, even with knowledge management. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, Ma.
You're very, very welcome. Yes, definitely change. Sorry, I was just going to say with change management driving knowledge management, it is so important, because how often do you find a procedure or a process that it's not just the way, the steps that are out of date, but even the way that sometimes we approach things. If you go back and you look at some of the videos from the 60s and 70s and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they used to do that. It's exactly that. So yes, change management and knowledge management are a continual thing. Sorry, you were going to say, I cut you off there.
Yes, I was actually going to ask if we still have other participants that might have one or two questions before we wrap up for the day.
As was mentioned, though, if you do think of something later on, you're more than welcome to add me on LinkedIn, contact me directly. You can go through the Institute as well, and we'll get questions to your answers.
Thank you very much, Bose. Thank you once again. I hope when next we call on you, to come and do justice to some of these important topics.
Always happy to be joining you folks.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. So on that note, we've come to the end of the February 2024 IIM webinar. Well, before we call it a day, we would like to have some of our eminent members at the Institute of Information here present. We want to recognize your presence, and please feel free to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, your location, what you do, your role in IIM, and so on and so forth. Thank you. We're going to do that for the next time. We have the next 5 minutes to get out.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Engineer Ephraim Udoji. I'm a system engineer and I'm a fellow member of the IIM and also a committee member, award committee member. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Engineer. Nice having you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, man.
Yeah, good evening. This is a wonderful place to be. I'm Princess Tiwalade Fakunda, the immediate past Vice President of the Executive Council of Institute of Information Management Africa. I'm a fellow of the Institute. I'm also a CDOA ambassador and a member of Education Committee of the Institute. I would like to thank our speaker, Bose, for this wonderful and excellent delivery. With perfect composure, when I was looking at her face, her composure was perfect and the presentation was well researched and superlatively delivered.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have learned a lot and we would like to have you another time. And I would like to say that we have been blessed to have you. We are really, really blessed. We appreciate you. We thank you very much for the presentation. And I cannot also complete my statements without appreciating our able, dynamic, motivational leader in the person of Dr. Oyedokun for making sure the free monthly webinar is always presented on monthly basis. We appreciate you and we thank you for always being there for we that are members of the Institute. We are very proud of you. And for everybody present, I say good evening. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful and great evening.
Thank you,
Bye.
man.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, good night. Thank you.
So you can unmute and introduce yourself, please.
Good evening. Oh, so somebody is on the.
Good evening. I'm Akintoye Famakinde. I'm a clinical pharmacist. I work at a Federal Medical Center, Owo. And I also lecture at Ashivas University, Owo. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the speaker tonight and also our able and dynamic chair, Dr. Oyedokun. I really appreciate you for your encouragement and for reaching out to me all the time. God bless you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Friday Peter. I'm a document controller manager in Med Technimon Nigeria Limited refinery, Port Harcourt refinery revamping. I'm a senior professional of IIM. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Monserrat Anike Bitoye. I'm a coordinator for IIM Africa, and also I also do real estate and do some other things on the side. It's been a pleasure being here, and I want to say a special thank you to the president and the presenter this evening. And Mommy Princess, a special shout out to you, ma, and to everybody else. Yes, ma.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you too.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, all.
A blessed day to everyone.
My name is Dr.
Good evening.
Taiwo Yeleye. I'm an ophthalmologist and medical doctor, but I have interest in information management. It's been a nice evening, and I've gained so much from the presentation. So thank you to Bose. Thank you to the Expo of the IIM and all others who made to be there. Good evening, all.
Blessed day, everyone. My name is Julius Macaulay Abi, Principal Consultant at TechRest Technologies. It's a wonderful pleasure. I look forward to these monthly sessions, really enlightening, and it also helps us to keep in check with current realities in the Information Management Institute. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Dr. Oyedokun. God bless you.
Hello and good evening to everybody. Yeah. My name is Paul Ubadamu. I'm a fellow of the Institute and I'm joining from Benin, Edo State. Thanks to the Institute management and to the lead speaker today on the webinar. A very incisive discussion. Thank you very much.
I am Reverend Dr. Paul T.E. Adebayo, the lead pastor of Estate Baptist Church. I am a fellow of the Institute and a CDU ambassador. I appreciate the president and our great presenter for tonight. It's always a delight being on the webinar training. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ahmed Ogbara. I work with Amni International Petroleum. I'm an information management officer, and it's nice being here today. I would like to thank the facilitator in the person of Bose, and then using this medium also to appreciate our president, Dr. Oyedokun. God will continue to lift IIM to the nearest future. Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Mrs. Omolara Akonchi, retired director from Central Bank of Nigeria. I'm a fellow of the Institute, and thank you for the webinar. Thank you, Ambassador. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Ma.
Good evening, my sister. Good evening.
How are you, Ma? It's been
very well.
Great
Thank you.
having you again this evening, Ma.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Same here, Ma. Same here,
Thank
Ma.
you. Thank
We wish you the same.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wani Sunday. I'm the record officer in a law firm and also a fellow of the Institute and the CDE ambassador. It's been a pleasure to have been part of this wonderful program. A shout out to our president, Ambassador Oyedokun. It's always been fun and effective interactive with him and every member of the Institute. Another shout out to our princess. Princess, good evening, ma.
Good evening, my dear brother Sunday. It's great having you again. I've missed you a lot.
I miss you too, mommy. Nice to hear your voice again.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too.
Good evening, ma.
Good evening, Princess.
Good evening, everyone.
My name is Akiyemi Abayomi Tosin. Can you hear?
I can hear you.
My name is Akiyemi Abayomi Tosin.
Brother Akiyemi, my pastor. Abayomi. My pastor.
Yes, ma. Thank you.
How are you?
Yes, ma. Fellow, I'm fine, ma. A fellow member. I work with NAFDAC, head of ICT in Lagos, and a member of AIG, Public Leadership Program, University of Government. I want to say thank you for this wonderful presentation. Knowledge management is one of the key things that is missing in public and private sector, and at least driving it from this level is a good thing for us in this country. And I know with IIM we can make it happen for this country to have another repository for us, for every organization. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much, my brother.
Yeah.
Hoping to see you on Sunday.
By grace of God.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Gabardine, I can see you're raising your hand. Kindly unmute and speak to the mic.
Yeah. Good evening, Madam President and the House. I hope you are hearing me.
Loud and clear, sir.
Oh,
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Thank you so much. I am entirely new on this platform. I was introduced by Mr. Atunde Jakode. I'm not too sure he's even on the platform as we speak. I'm completely new, like I said. But first thing that impressed me is the diversification of attendance. I can see people from across the country. And for me, that's a very impressive exposure, which I appreciate so much. If you want me to introduce myself, let me first of all inform you that I suffer from crisis of identity. I am into too many things at the same time, so I don't even know who I am. But I hope to end up as a scholar, a researcher, and somebody who will be part of solution to societal problem. So I'm happy to be here with you. God bless you all.
Amen. Thank you, sir.
God bless you, sir.
Amen. Amen.
Good evening, President and Madam Chairman. Princess.
Do we have any other?
Good evening, Daddy. That's Daddy. Okay, good evening, sir.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
I don't need to introduce myself.
Please do, sir. You still need to introduce yourself, sir.
Okay. I'm Aretuji Okebala, fellow and CTO ambassador.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you for attending the webinar, sir.
Thank you.
I think we also have in our midst of directors, Mrs. Yemisi Grace Oyibo. If she's still online, she can unmute and introduce herself.
Okay, yes. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, ma.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure being here with my family, the IIM family. I mean, I know it's been a long time. I've been saddled with responsibilities for the Society of Nigerian Archivists, of which I presently head. I am Mrs. Yemisi Grace Oyibo. I'm the CEO for Market Analysis Consulting Limited, and we are into records and information management. I am one of the board of trustees of IIM, and one time, what do you call it now?
Vice President.
Vice President and governing council. But I'm proud to be part of the board of trustees. This is a position I have actually committed to till my lifetime. And I'm happy to be here tonight. I want to thank, I know that our presenter has left right now, but that was a wonderful presentation, even though I joined a bit late. But the little that I met, I know that this is really good. Very, very good. I want to thank everyone. And for my president, I want to thank you so much for not giving up on us. Thank you so much for this monthly webinar and all other things. As you support IIM, so do you support all other sister organizations. So we are proud of you, and we pray that God will continue to give you the wisdom to do these things well. God bless you all. Yeah.
Thank you, ma. Thank you, ma.
It's a pleasure.
So thanks everyone for being part of, we've just shared on the chat box. In terms of announcements, the Institute will be having the next webinar on the 21st of March, same time. And March 6 to 8, we shall be having the Data Management Masterclass and Data Management Leadership Workshop in London. It's going to be an hybrid program. It will be both physical and also online. Same in London on the 9th of March, we shall be having the IIM United Kingdom chapter annual convention in London. We use this opportunity to invite members, well-wishers, professionals, anywhere around the United Kingdom to be part of that event. Then for information about other training programs and activities lined up for the year, the Institute's 2024 calendar is also available for download on our website. So we're using this opportunity to also invite and call upon professionals, regardless of our industry. Our membership is open to all, is open to professionals from diverse backgrounds. And the process of becoming a member of the Institute, it's very, very seamless. You only need to submit your updated resume or CV to our membership department for evaluation. And also, as we usually do, members of the Institute here present have the opportunity to request for certificate of participation at this webinar. And that also entitles them to 1 CPD point for their professional, continuing professional development for those that might be interested in pursuing certification in any of the certification programs being, being hosted by the Institute. Then for those that will be requesting for their certificate of participation, it is free of charge for members. And for members to take advantage of that, they need to make the requisition within 3 months, because we have certain terms and conditions around that in order to be able to manage the process more appropriately. So members have the opportunity to request for their certificate of participation. Non-members that are interested can also indicate interest in that. They have a token to pay, to be part of that, because we want to ensure that, whatever knowledge that we've been able to acquire, we're able to document them, and we're able to also ensure that they reflect, talking about resume, profiles, and so on and so forth. So on that note, I want to say a very big thank you to us. I can see Margaret. Margaret is still online. Margaret from South Africa. I can see Sharon, also from South Africa. Margaret, if it's convenient for you, you can unmute and let's hear from you. Margaret, if you are there, can you hear me? Sharon, you also have the same opportunity. If you're able to unmute, and let's hear from you all the way from South Africa. I hope you guys are getting set for us again in 2024.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity, Doc. It was a very informative session, and knowledge management is something that is close to my heart. I really enjoyed it, and I've learned a lot, and hoping to learn more this year with IIM. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Nice having you on board. I can see Ada Kadiri. Ada, what is going on? We haven't heard from you today.
Good evening, Doctor. Happy New Year to everyone here. I'm glad to be here. My name is Adam Makadiri, a certified document control professional. And I came in late though, but it was really a very insightful session. And I was telling myself that I was going to do more research on knowledge management. I really liked what I heard today. Thank you so much, Doctor, for all you do for us. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. For others that are yet to do their introduction, we still have the opportunity before we shut down the system. Thank you.